Good morning, friends. I don't usually read quite so early in the morning, but I have kind of a busy day today, so I'm going to go ahead and do it this morning, and you can enjoy it throughout the day. Those of you who are enjoying this, or listening to it, and not enjoying it. All right, Chapter 3. What would Alva do? After Bonson left Hellel's tent, the others continued to talk. Prior and Pincer entered into a rather heated discussion about whether Bonson was fully trustworthy. Pincer insisted that he would honor his oath to Alva and serve Bonson whatever may come, but he was not optimistic about where it would lead. Prior was rather angry at this, and continually revisited Bonson's many exploits for Lacinia against Dachmann, most of which had been carried out at Alva's side or at his direction, and all of which had involved serious risk to his life. Diron and Hellel seemed to ignore this argument, and entered into a whispered discussion about possible future plans. After a few minutes, Hope whispered to Nibra that she needed some time alone to let the news about Alva settle in. She asked Nibra to pick up Al-Salah and said she would meet them back at their tent later that evening. When Hope left Hellel's tent, she ran in the direction in which she knew Bonson would be walking to reach he and Salia's tent. She overtook him long before he got there because she was running and he was walking slowly. He was sad, exhausted, and lost in thought. He turned around as he heard her footsteps running up behind him. He was quite surprised to see her. She was out of breath from the run and began talking fast between breaths. "Lord Bonson, I know you said you needed a night to think. You command the army now, and I'm not sure this is appropriate, but I need a private word." "Slow down and breathe," he said with a smile. "I will be happy to hear whatever you have to say at any time." Hope smiled as well, and took some time to catch her breath. She breathed slowly in through her nose and out through her mouth, as she had learned from books and as Alva had taught her, not knowing that she already knew it. The memory made her smile again and glow faintly. "Alva's on your mind, huh?" Bonson asked. "Always, but I just thought of a funny, happy memory." "But you aren't here to discuss funny, happy memories." "No, and I won't detain you long, but I need to say 2 things." "You have my ear." "The first is, if I dare, a word of counsel." "Dare," Bonson said. "Since you are in command now, taking Alva's place at the head of the army, I think the most important thing for you to ask yourself in this circumstance is, what would Alva do?" "Good advice," he replied. "I agree. Next?" "I know that I am part of the army, and that you command the army. I don't want to go against you, but I don't have the fortitude of Alva or his father. My mind is made up about what I'm going to do." "Which is?" "They have my husband, and I'm going to get him." Hope had expected Bonson to reel in surprise when she said this, but he did not. He thought deeply without answering. Not waiting for his answer, Hope said, "I know that Alva told you many things as you rode together. His plans for the future of the war, and the means by which Dachmann could be defeated. You know everything I know. With that information, consider what I've said, and I'll see you tomorrow morning." Bonson did not speak. His face never looked surprised, but he seemed to be thinking so hard that speaking would be an interruption. He simply nodded, then bowed. Hope made her way back to her tent. She had many things to discuss with Nibra before the morning. Chapter 4. Oops. Alva continued his awkward stretches and movements as the wagon made its way toward the Huron capital. The capital city of Huron was called Crondon. It was built on the site of the original settlement established by Lord Hamar, the father of Huron the Strongarm. As they traveled, Alva and Hendren continued to talk about various subjects. "So why did you and your father go to Huron?" Hendren asked. "My father wanted to see it." "He had never been there before the war started?" "No, his father had, but things had been growing tense for a long time before the war started." "Did you see the palace? I hear there's nothing quite like it in the world." "You can't get within a few miles of the city without seeing the palace. It is pretty magnificent in its way. To know there is nothing like it in the world, one would have to see the whole world, I suppose. But if you mean, did I go inside, then the answer is no. I suggested to Father that we break in, just for fun. We could have. I even suggested he could find Diaphon alone and see what kind of conqueror he was when it was just him and my father's sword. But he said no. It was then that he told me he would die someday and absolutely forbid me to take any revenge for what happened to him." Brochin and several other Docmonian soldiers laughed when he said this, but they ignored them. "Is it even possible to see the whole world?" Hendren asked, going back to Alva's earlier statement. "I don't know." "How big is the world?" Hendren asked. "Once again, you're asking the wrong man. If you asked my father or Hope, they'd tell you that the world is round. If that's true, it's so big you can't tell from any given point. I'm sure Hope could give you its exact circumference. Neither of them have a habit of being wrong, so I suppose the world must be round. That's about all I know." "If the world is round," Hendren asked, "wouldn't people fall off, the people who live on the other side?" "My father said they wouldn't. Something to do with physical science. Mass attracts things to itself or something like that. With a really big object like the world, it pulls things toward itself. That's why you fall out of a tree. I don't really understand it. I'll make sure Hope explains it when we get back to Lacinia." The soldiers laughed again. "I always thought we fell because the sky was up and the ground was down," Hendren said. "You have my gift for physical science. My father spent a lot of time explaining things about it that I never understood, but you can debate it with Hope." "Your witch is a smart one, is she?" Brochin asked goadingly. "Yes," Alva replied. "Must be hard for a man when his wife is so much smarter than he is." "It was until I met you. Now I take solace in the fact that I could never possibly be as stupid as you are." "We'll see how funny you are in the Crondon dungeon." "That's where we're going?" Alva asked. "You are," Brochin replied. This confirmed a suspicion that Alva had. "Hendren," he said very seriously, "apparently they are going to separate us soon. For a while at least. I need to tell you something very important." "You're the Danae," Hendren replied. Alva gave a slight smile. "Hendren," he continued, "you are the son of the greatest man in the kingdom." "My father always said you were the greatest man in the kingdom." "He was wrong. Did you know that I was once engaged to your mother?" "I had heard." "I was the son of the then greatest man in the kingdom. But your mother married your father because something happened that showed her that he was a greater man than I am." "That's not quite the way I heard it." "You heard wrong. As I say, you are the son of the greatest man in the kingdom. I want you to remember that, and I want you to live like it until it is time for you to die like it." "I will," Hendren said. I've been thinking about why they kept you alive when everyone else was killed, Alva continued. I think it was because Sverrian knew that you and I have a special relationship. If you and I do see one another again anytime soon, it will be because they want to torture you in front of me to try to get me to tell them something. I have nothing useful to tell them, but even if I did, I wouldn't. Not even in those circumstances. Do you understand? Yes, Hendren said. He gulped slightly and then said in a shaky voice, Alva, I am Hendren II, the son of Hendren the Healer, a captain in the army of Lord Alva Dene. If those circumstances occur, I may beg you to tell them what they want you to tell them. If I do, remember now, when my mind was clear, I told you to let them do their worst. Doing any damage to Lassania is not worth stopping my screams. As he spoke, his voice grew stronger. By the time he had finished, he looked proud and lord-like. The soldiers of Dachmann were silent. I'm glad we understand one another, Alva said. I am very proud of you, as your father and mother would be. Now Brochen did snort with laughter. We'll see how courageous you are with your feet to the fire, he said. At least I have some courage when my feet are not to the fire, Hendren said. At least I only slap a man when his hands are free. Brochen rode over, reached in, and slapped Hendren once more. Hendren had time, so he could have scooted to the center of the cage out of reach if he wanted to. Instead, he just sat calmly and let himself be struck. Brochen struck him so hard this time that he fell over sideways. Brochen looked at Alva, and Alva smirked. Well, I guess he won that argument, Hendren said to Alva. Then they both laughed again. The journey continued with much more conversation and occasional singing. Alva's high spirits had a contagious effect on Hendren. The Dachmonian soldiers seemed very annoyed and resentful at the levity these two men could have when they were certainly headed for torture and death. But Hendren had spent his entire life admiring Alva, and the fact that Alva was not afraid had a powerful effect on him. He was proud to be here with Alva, and determined to face his trials in the way that Alva did. After a long while, Alva said, Hendren, look up ahead. Hendren looked. Do you see that spot in the distance? Yes? That's the top of the palace at Krondon. Wow, it must be pretty big. It is. A marvel of engineering. It's a giant pyramid. As I understand it, the throne room is at the top. On each of the four sides there is a great staircase that leads up to the throne room, with exits along the way for all the different levels. Why do you think Daivon's heirs never built a palace to rival it? Daivon and his heirs were not interested in shows of power or wealth. They would have considered it a waste of manpower. That's one of the major differences between Hurin and Lassania. The first emperor, Hurin the Strongarm, was pretty keen on showing off. Did he build it? No, it wasn't until hundreds of season changes after his time. When Hurin had grown large enough that they could muster the manpower as a kind of tribute. You mean slave labor? Not exactly. Slavery has always been illegal in Hurin. Rather than sending the annual tribute, many conquered kingdoms were required to send architects, craftsmen, and laborers for the work. The men were paid by their own local rulers. Hellel said they made sure the rulers did not have to pay any more than the required tribute. But tribute is still a little like slavery, isn't it? It could be argued so. Well, boy, Brochen interjected, you're only going to see it from a distance. We're going to drop you off at the prison outside the city before we deliver your master here to his vacation resort. I guess you get to make some friends, Alva said. Oh, yes, Broken said. Your prison mates will love you. We aren't in the habit of taking Lasamian prisoners, so you'll be the only one there. So make some new friends, Alva said with a smile. After a time, the wagon turned off the main road leading to Crondon and took a side road leading to the prison. Hendren was removed from the wagon as Broken delivered him to the prison guards. He gave him one last slap on the face and then turned to Alva with a gloating, challenging smile. Alva smirked again. As Hendren was led away, Alva called after him. Hendren, it would probably be better if we didn't meet again soon. Got it, Hendren said casually over his shoulder. Bye, Alva. Bye, son, Alva replied. Once Hendren had been dropped off at the prison, the cart was turned toward Crondon. They stopped at the main city gate to check with the guard. To check in with the guard. What do we have here? The guard asked. This is the mighty Lord Alva Denay, Broken said with mock reverence. The guard looked at Alva with a smirking, gloating smile. Alva smiled back in a friendly way and winked at him. Crondon was a very large city, so it took some time to get to the palace. The streets were full of Dochmonian soldiers. No Huron soldiers were in the city. And Huron citizens who looked worn and frightened. Word quickly spread through the streets that Alva Denay was taken prisoner. The Dochmonian soldiers began to jeer at him as he passed by, throwing pieces of rotten fruit at his carriage until they were told to stop because they were hitting the guards by accident. Meanwhile, Alva's spirits continued to be high. As he passed through the jeering soldiers, he sang another one of Prior's songs. I once fought a man in a slimy pit. He scratched, he poked, he bit, and he spit. He wasn't all that tough, and I would have knocked him out, but he smelled so bad that his stench made me pass out. My friend Prior wrote this song, Alva said to one of the soldiers. I guess he thought that the words out and out rhymed. As far as I know, I'm the only person he's ever lost a fight with, but most of his songs are gags. Who cares? The soldier asked. Alva shrugged and kept singing. I once fought a man in a big round ring. He didn't punch and kick, all he did was dance and sing. I moved up close, set to give him my worst. But at that very moment, my eardrums burst. I once fought a man on a tavern floor, but for the life of me, I can't recall what for. We couldn't stand up 'cause we drunk an awful lot. We both passed out before we ever really fought. I once fought a man in a greasy hole. We fought tooth and claw like a gopher and a mole. I thought I really had him when I finally got him down. But a big rain came and we both nearly drowned. I had my worst loss on my very best day. That was the morning I met Alva Denay. He was so small I thought I'd crack him like a nut, but he kicked me in the shin and he punched me in the gut. That last verse really happened, Alva said with a boastful smile. At this point they were approaching their destination. The palace in Crondon was a giant pyramid. It had multiple levels as it worked its way to the top, which was crowned with a giant hall, traditionally the hall of the Huron Emperor, but now used as the council chamber of the Dochmanon. On the four corners of the pyramid were four giant staircases going to the top, with exits at each level. It was a marvel of architecture and engineering. It was said that there were also lower underground levels, the lowest of which was a dungeon for the Empire's most dangerous prisoners. This rumor had never been fully validated among the common people, the main prison being where Hendren II had been dropped off. But the fact that Alva was being taken to the palace suggested to the people that the rumors were true. Alva knew full well there was a dungeon in the palace, not only because Brochen had mentioned it, but because the Denays had been aware of its existence for a long time. When they came close to the palace, the cart took a side street to avoid the main gate and approached the palace from a side entrance. Several Dachmonian soldiers guarded the entrance, and it was clear that they had been expecting the cart. The entrance would have hardly been noticeable if the soldiers had not been there. The front gate was large and ornate. 20 men could walk in side by side, but this side entrance was a small door. In the Huron days, men would have been brought into this entrance quietly, but there had been no attempt to bring in Alva Denay quietly. The Dachmanon wanted all to know that Alva Denay was being held in the Crondon Palace, where he now ruled. Teraphon the Wise had not been seen for many months. The Dachmanon had never publicly appeared, though it was said he resided in the palace. At first, Teraphon had made appearances to read the Dachmanon's edicts, but this had ceased with no explanation. People had guessed that he had either been imprisoned or killed, but there was no information. Brochen unlocked the door of the cage and swung it open. "Okay, Denay," he said. "Time to get out. Move." Alva was sitting with his back against the far side of the cage. "Are you serious?" he asked Brochen. "Move," Brochen said again. "My hands and feet are shackled." "And my hands are shackled to my feet. How am I supposed to move?" "Then I guess I'll have to help you," Brochen said. He entered the cage, grabbed Alva's feet, and pulled. But Alva did not move. He was dropping his weight. "All right," Brochen said. "If that's the way you want to play, then your exit will be a little rougher. I hope you like splinters in your backside." Brochen planted his feet firmly, grabbed Alva's feet again, leaned back his weight, and jerked. At that moment, Alva scooted his body forward to match Brochen's jerk, and Brochen fell on his own backside. Simultaneously with the force of Brochen's pull, Alva moved his hands and feet together in a lightning movement, kicking Brochen's solar plexus with both feet and causing his body to lunge forward as he lost his wind. Alva immediately raised both hands and feet together, grabbing Brochen's throat with both hands. With his left hand, he crushed his windpipe, while with his right, he gripped the back of Brochen's neck and with his fingers and plunged his thumb through the artery on the left side of the large man's neck. As Brochen's shocked eyes met Alva's, the last sound he ever heard was Alva saying, "Oops." Alva casually pushed Brochen's corpse to the side and looked around him. The confused guards had a moment of shocked silence, then fumbled with their crossbows and pointed them at him, as though they were worried that, in the cage with hands and feet shackled together, he might somehow manage to kill them all. But they did not shoot. They seemed confused, not knowing what to do with their captain dead. Alva said, "So you boys aren't going to kill me, huh? I guess the Dachmanon wants me alive for the time being." Then he smiled with a twinkle in his eye and said, "Oops."